Hello, everybody. Sunday Adelaja here. Hello, everyone. Sunday Adelaja here. Good evening. Shegun Fatumo. Welcome. Nkiro Jimadu. It's going to be a very, very unique program today. Nice way. Well, I'm African. I'm Nigerian today. So this is intentional because we are going to be talking about Nigeria. So I put on Nigeria attire today. Yes, Layo Shao, Sandra Eduwonyi, Nkiro Jimadu, right, Bose Fayajola, Eric Osadolo, Olabode Thomas, that's my classmate from primary school. We're together since 6 years old. Ikoti, Japheth, T.Y. Moore. You like my way? And this is Nigeria. I've gone the Nigerian way today. Abasi Godwin, Yemi Phil, Nkiro Jimadu. Wow, Igwe. Igwe, okay. Adeola Disu. They said I look take away. What is take away? I don't know what take away means. That's not my language that I'm used to. Justin Bayo, Bill Davids. Okay, everybody is complimenting me for my African outfit. Then, if that is so, maybe I should wear more of Africa. Maybe I should go more African. I've been Nigerianized today, right. Because I'm going to be talking about this book. Patience Oyewole, I'm going to be talking about your husband and about the book here. I'm going to be talking about this book here. This is what the topic is about today. So if you have not yet shared this link, please go ahead and look for your share button and let's go and share the link immediately. Let's go as fast as possible. Let's quickly go and share the link. Go look after under the video. Look for your share button. Let's quickly go and share the link to this book. Let's go and share the link to this book. And I want to also thank Layo and the husband. They were the ones who helped me to edit this book. They were the editors for this book. So they did a good job. That is Layo and Charles. And I'm very proud of you guys. So this is the book. I'm sorry it's not showing the right way, but Only God Can Save Nigeria. Then I wrote in red, what a myth. It's a myth. It's thinking like that. Only God can save Nigeria? You think so? I don't think so. Not just that I don't think so. I am proving in this book that it's not God, it's not only God that can save Nigeria. That leave God alone. God has done his own part. Make you leave him alone. Leave God alone. Don't touch God in this matter. This matter is not God's talk at all. This is a responsibility he has given to us. This is our responsibility now. And we are the ones to perform. And we should stop looking for excuses and stop looking for and put the blame on God. You know, it's a little bit wicked to put the blame on God. It's a little bit wicked to put the blame on God. So let's put the blame on God. Let's just go ahead and do what we need to do, and restore our country, Okay, now let me start this book by reading a few words that are written here. In this book, you will find that while we are singing, only God can save Nigeria, God is actually saying, only we can fix Nigeria. We are praying to God that only God can save Nigeria, and we are asking God to come and fix our country, but in the real sense, only we can fix our country. Secondly, this book is a pathway for national transformation through God-loving citizens of this country. In this book, you will see simple and practical steps to transforming any nation. And let me read to you what Reverend Joseph Oyewole from South Africa says. Reverend Oyewole says, Dr. Sunday Adelaja is not only a revolutionary genius, but also a trailblazer. an innovator, a pathfinder. Now I'm going to change my regalia. I'm going to follow the regalia that Oyewole is saying here. I'm going to be using this as my title now. Trailblazer, innovator, pathfinder, and a generational figure. In my entire years of ministry as missionary, I have never read a book written with such a passion, intensity, and authority. Now, today, I have an African, a true African man with me today, who I want to ask, what does he think about what this man has said? Well, he is not from Nigeria as well. The book is about Nigeria, but this man is not from Nigeria. This is my friend. He's a pastor, a minister, but a government official as well from Uganda. He's one of the brilliant minds of Africa, one of the bright minds of Africa. He's doing his PhD right now in America, but he came to write his thesis while he's here, preparing to defend his thesis while he's here with me in Ukraine. So he's going to be with me in Ukraine for some time, writing his thesis and defending it before he goes back to America to do his PhD defense. But then, while he was here, he got a hold of the book. And this brother has been in another world. He's writing program for his own country now. He's preparing what to do for Uganda. And so, only God can do that. Pastor James, welcome. How are you? Introduce yourself, sir.
I'm terrific. I'm so excited and glad to be part of this engagement this evening. If there is anything that I can say has been dramatic on my side, has been coming to Ukraine in this particular season of my life. The decision I made to come to Ukraine, in my view, has turned out to be a milestone in my life.
Why though?
Because yes, whereas I came to have some time, a personal time, and seek the Lord to be able to understand my next assignment as I complete my doctoral program. Just as you've already introduced me, I'm doing a doctoral program.
By the way, this is Mr. James Kisale.
Yes.
James Kisale.
For my colleagues who are listening to me, I got motivated to do this doctoral program here in 2012 after doing HMT2.
Right. Some of them are coming for HMT, by the way.
Yes.
By the way, if you are not yet registered for HMT, we have HMT coming up in 2 weeks' time. That is from the 6th to the 12th of November. So if you are not yet registered for HMT, now, you need to write us as fast as possible. Write to guest, G-U-E-S-T, guest at godembassy.org. Guest at godembassy.org. G-U-E-S-T at godembassy.org. If you want to be with us for one of the most life-transforming week of your life, please write a letter to us and we'll be happy to invite you here. So Pastor James is a graduate of HMT, and it was after that program that he decided to do his PhD.
And I'm doing my PhD as a platform for social transformation. Straight to the issue of this book. To everybody that is listening to me and that has not yet gotten...
Can you show them?
Yes. And everybody who hasn't yet gotten opportunity to access this book, I would really use the strongest word to say, I command you to go and pick yourself a copy of this book. Because as far as I'm concerned, finally, the church in Africa has a manual.
Manual at last.
Has a manual that clearly describes what is needed for us as a church in Africa to transform our nations. This is not a book for Nigeria alone, much as the title is Only God Can Save Nigeria. I wanted to edit it and say only God can save Nigeria and Uganda.
No, you have to, when we are going to print, when the time when the time comes to print it in other countries, we are going to remove Nigeria and we are going to put Uganda when it's time to print it in Uganda.
Okay, I concede on that. But truly speaking, this is a manual. And it is a book that has the answers for what the church in Africa, and specifically the church in Nigeria, requires for the transformation of our country. In this book, you are going to be challenged to specifically get off your Pentecostal chair and your Pentecostal deathbed that many of us are lying on, so that we can get out of our comfort zone and do something to liberate our nation. I will give a brief synopsis of this book.
Right.
This book is divided into 3 parts. Part 1 deals with confronting the status quo.
Okay.
And part 2 of this book deals with challenging the church of the day.
Okay.
And the last part of this book challenges us to look at the practical steps to a new Nigeria.
Okay.
Now, the time, Pastor, we have here is not enough for me to go through the entire book from chapter to chapter. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to try to belabor to look at the first part of this book, because personally, I found it extremely challenging and the most informative book as a part of this book. I read your book on church shift.
Right.
And there is no doubt that that was another classic.
Yep.
Of the books that have been written concerning the church.
Right.
But in part 1 of this particular book, the reason why this book to me is even more important than really church shift is that
it's even more important than church shift.
Oh yes, at least as far as my analysis is concerned. This book
and church shift is regarded as one of the most important books that have ever been written in Christianity. But this book, you see it as more important than church shift.
I see it as more important because this book is challenging we the elites in Africa, we the elites, and also those that are confined within the 4 walls of the church, the pastors and all those who have their living off the ministry. This book challenges us to think beyond our churches and begin to think nation. It challenges us in terms of stretching our mindset from our small territories that we think we have in form of our churches to begin to look at the nation as our mandate and as our call. Therefore, when we talk about confronting the status quo, the first thing that I found very informative was the fact that our religious mindset must be changed.
Right.
And when I think about our religious mindset and reading this book, I'm convinced that not only do we need to change our religious mindset, but we need a total overhaul. A total overhaul
of our religious understanding.
Of our religious mindset. The Cambridge English Dictionary defines the word overhaul to mean to repair,
right,
or to improve something so that every part of it works as it should.
Amen.
In other words, every part works as it was intended. So, when we talk about overhauling our religious mindset, I feel that our mindset needs to be overhauled, needs to be changed, so that it begins to function the way the designer originally designed it to function.
Yes.
Many of the colleagues that are listening to me are already familiar with some of the statistics in Nigeria. But for emphasis...
Not everybody.
Yes, so for emphasis sake, I will highlight a few statistics that I picked from this book. One, the current UN estimates of the population of Nigeria puts it at 189 million people.
Right.
And this therefore makes Nigeria to be the 7th most populated country on the face of the earth.
Right.
Next to China, India, the US,
Russia,
Brazil, Indonesia, Pakistan. Actually, Nigeria is more populated than Russia.
Yeah, Nigeria is bigger than Russia.
Yes,
right.
It is bigger than Russia.
Right.
Now, at the same time, there is a kind of a debate in terms of how many Christians are in Nigeria.
Okay.
But as I was looking at the current estimates, they indicate that Nigeria has about 85 million Christians,
right,
making 45% of the entire Nigerian population.
So we can't complain, huh?
Absolutely not.
No right to complain.
85 million Christians. For your information, Nigeria is 6 times the population of Uganda. 6 times.
My God.
Almost 6 times, because our current population is about 35 million people. So if you are talking of 189 million people in Nigeria, that's 6 times the population of Uganda. But at the same time, Nigeria has the largest church attendance rate in the world.
In the world?
And the
church attendance rate. So more people go to church in Nigeria than in the whole world.
Than anywhere else.
So there are more Christians on a given Sunday in Nigerian churches than in America, than in Brazil, than in China, than in Korea, than in Europe, than everywhere.
Even here in Ukraine.
No, Ukraine doesn't even count.
Now,
the largest church attendance in the world.
What is so humbling is that Nigeria has held the #1 position from 1990 up to 2013, when the last statistics was carried out.
As the largest?
As the nation with the largest church attendance rate.
In the whole world?
In the whole world.
And nothing is changing?
And nothing is changing. And I'm convinced, even if any other study was to be done now, Nigeria will not lose that #1 position.
More people.
Will definitely have more people. The other interesting statistics about Nigeria is that, of course, there's weekly programs from Monday to Sunday, or if you want, from Monday to Monday. Every single day in church, there is a program.
Every single day, not just on Sunday.
Every single day.
My God.
And not just only daily, but starting as early as 8 a.m.
People are in the church.
People are in the church.
But some people actually start as early as 5 a.m.
My goodness.
Yes.
And that is how challenging it is to look at these statistics. The other thing which is worth noting is that prayer and fasting programs in Nigeria sometimes go beyond 100 days.
100 days of prayer and fasting.
100 days of prayer and fasting. And believe me, my pastor, this has been translated to Uganda. Uganda is
now copying Nigeria.
Uganda is a sister, is a brother to Nigeria, following Nigeria very closely in every aspect of religious observance.
But nothing is changing in the country. Nothing is changing in Nigeria. The country is not being transformed. The country is not being regenerated. The country is not being developed. In fact, things are getting worse by the day. The more they fast and pray, the worse the things become. Why? That is why this book is absolute necessity for every African, for every Nigerian, for everybody where they are looking up to religion and to God to save their country. Because it's not God's business anymore. We need to read this book to know what to do.
Matter of fact, as I read this book, one thing that comes to my mind is that something is wrong with the gospel that we have received or that we received in Africa.
With the form of Christianity we are practicing.
The kind of Christianity we are practicing in Africa, and of course in Nigeria, as I read this book, aligns very well with Karl Marx's statement that religion is the opium of the masses.
Yeah.
Religion is the opium of the masses.
Yeah.
For many years, I used to disregard this quotation of Karl Marx. But it's when I read this book, pondered on that statement again, because you will find that statement in this book. Now, I had to go to the dictionary to look for what opium means. Now, not that I don't know what opium means. I'm a customs officer and I've been getting many of these illegally imported into my country. So,
and you are also a chemist.
And I'm a chemist at the same time. So I fully understand what opium means. But from the other understanding of opium, the dictionary defines opium as something that has a tranquilizing or numbing or stupefying effect. Something that has a tranquilizing or stupefying effect. Now, to stupefy means to cause someone to be unable to think clearly or to be sensitive to the surroundings.
My God.
It also means to make or become less keen or responsive. That hit me strong because as I reflected, not only on the church in Nigeria, but by extension, the church in my country in Uganda, I see how unresponsive we have become. I see how insensitive we have become to the ills of society, to the challenges that are facing our society. Matter of fact, it is not uncommon to see Christians praising the Lord on their way to the church as they bypass those who are begging on the streets, as they bypass those who are suffering in the slums, as they see those who have slept hungry, but yet they somehow think it's no longer necessary to do something
respond to them
about it.
We have become stupefied.
That's the pain. In my country, some Christians have even spiritualized those who are in need to such an extent that they see demons every time they see a beggar. They think that for you to pick money out of your pocket and extend it to a hungry soul, your money might be tied up and you might remain poor. So you rather not give to that person.
Deception.
That is how painful it has become. But you see, this book poses two critical questions after that kind of statistics that Nigeria has. The first question is, how much of those prayers that we make from Monday to Sunday, how much of those prayers,
how much of the 100 days fasting and prayer
and church attendance have translated into national development? That has been the hardest question that shook me out of my comfort zone. As I read this book and pondered on that question, for sure we have prayed. For sure we have fasted. For sure we've organized every kind of meeting that can be made. But our countries are not changing. In fact, it's like the more we pray, the worse it becomes. So how much of those prayers are being translated into national development? 2, is it God who developed the nations of Japan, of Singapore, of Saudi Arabia, the US, all these countries where we like to go, including United Arab Emirates? That's one of the countries that I love to visit. But the question is it God who developed
those countries?
Those countries? Obviously not. Obviously not. And so, as I read this book, I started to ask myself, is there a relationship between religion and corruption, for example?
Good one.
You know, is there a relationship between religion and corruption? Why? Because the most religious countries of the world at the same time are the most corrupt.
Including Nigeria, where they are praying 100 days.
Including Nigeria.
And where you have 89 million people in church every Sunday.
Including Nigeria. In fact, just a few days ago, I was checking the current statistics. A research carried out by the Pew Research Center in the US, talking about religion in the next 50 years, 2010, 2050, puts Nigeria as the 7th most religious country
in the world.
And sadly, Ethiopia is number 1. In fact, a number of countries that are leading at this chart are in Africa. Ethiopia is number 1. A few countries there. My country is actually number 4.
No.
You can't believe it, Pastor.
More religious than Nigeria.
You cannot believe it. That's why I was saying that this book is surely not only for Nigeria, but for Uganda. For Uganda. Of course, numerically, Nigeria beats Uganda 6 times, even in terms of the church and the Christians that throng to the churches. But all these countries that are very religious in the world, at the same time, they are the ones that are leading in being corrupt.
My God.
That means that religion is not having any effect on us. I was looking at last year's Global Corruption Perception Index for 2015. Nigeria was ranked 136 out of 168 most corrupt countries in the world. Meaning that Nigeria is only 22 countries shy
of being the most corrupt.
Yes, of being the most corrupt in the world. How do we reconcile that, surely? My country, Uganda, followed Nigeria very closely. In fact, Uganda is more corrupt than Nigeria, sadly, because according to the same index, Uganda is 139 out of 168 most corrupt country in the world. Now, relatedly to that is that at the same time, the most religious countries are also the ones that are not peaceful. They're the ones that are not peaceful. The Global Peace Index for this year, 2016, shows Nigeria as the most unpeaceful country, occupying a position of 149 out of 163 least peaceful countries in the world. Unbelievable. And of course, my country is 101 out of 163.
More peaceful.
I would say least peaceful because really,
compared to Nigeria,
well, but really, we should be more peaceful than we are as countries that, quote unquote, seem to know God more than some of these other countries. Now, This book, I have managed to pick out 8 key observations, which I think all the colleagues that are listening to me would do well to appreciate and go and expound more on these observations as you read this book. Number 1 observation I made is that our religious mindset has stupefied us and prevented us from being proactive and taking responsibility for our nation. That is so painful. Our religious mindset has really prevented us from taking responsibility for our nations.
Right.
The word responsibility means it has 2 words combined together: response and ability. What this actually means is that the church in Nigeria is not responding to its ability. The Christians, the individual elites who are actually the answer to every ill in Nigeria, are not taking responsibility for Nigeria. And I will quote verbatim from this book on page 26. The book challenges us by asking us to think through some tough logical questions. It says, would it be fair to say that while we were busy attending church services, other nations were developing? Let me repeat that. Would it be fair to say that while we were busy attending church services, other nations were developing? Would it be correct to say that while we were whiling away time in religious equality and decory, other nations were developing and advancing? I mean, if God was responsible for the development of nations, shouldn't he have favored those of us who were the most faithful to church services? Shouldn't he have favored those of us who are more consistent in our attendance of church meetings? Those are serious questions to ponder about. Number 2, our mindset has caused us to wait for God to do for us what he has already enabled us to do. It's so sad. And for so long, I mean, myself I've been in that kind of deception, you know, praying and saying, I mean, at the time the Lord will do it, you know, praying and waiting upon the Lord because I was convinced that it is the will of God, you know. So as I have got to wait for the right timing of the Lord to probably do what I feel God has called me to do. But precisely, it is that mindset that has locked all of us as leaders in churches to remain within the 4 walls of the church and not get out. Absolutely. In this same book, there is a quotation that again I will read because it challenged me. On page 27 of the book, there is a quotation by Marcus Garvey, who says, God and nature first made us what we are, and then out of our own created genius, we make ourselves what we want to be.
Right.
This has challenged me. He continues on to say, let the sky and God be our limit, and eternity our measurement. That means that we should not sit and wait for God to change Nigeria. We should actually get moving and begin to do what God has already enabled us to do in order to change Nigeria, because each of us is a genius. Matter of fact, Pastor, there is no country that is blessed in Africa like Nigeria, because when you look at the resources in Nigeria that are scattered across the globe. If only all these that are scattered everywhere took responsibility to say, enough is enough, we've supported other countries long enough, I think let's go back. And no matter what it takes, we must change our countries. I mean, Daniel, after he had spent 70 years in captivity, finally, on the orders of King Cyrus, the Jews had to return to Jerusalem to rebuild it. So I believe that we are in a time where everybody in the diaspora must return to Africa. Those from Nigeria, they must return to Nigeria. Those from Uganda, they must return to Uganda and other countries so that we can rebuild our nations, because we have what it takes to rebuild our countries. Number 3, our mindset has created a God who is very helpless in dealing with the ills of society. And to me, that is really what shocked me as I read this book, that it seems that we have created our own God in Nigeria. Is no longer the God of the Bible. We've frankly created another God. A God who enjoys much prayer from his people but never answers them.
People are asking where could they get the book. The book is on Amazon. If you put Sunday Adelaja, Only God Can Save Nigeria, the book is on Amazon, and the book is on Akada Books. If you are based in Nigeria, the book is on akadabooks.com or amazon.com. You could go and get it there. Please write down, Pastor.
Oh my God. Let me read another quotation from the book. Page 28 of the book says, in all our attendance to church.
Can you raise it a little bit higher so that people could say
okay.
Yes.
In all our attendance to church and our devotion to the mosques, we haven't been able to give birth to enough jobs to affect the unemployment rate in Nigeria. We haven't been able to keep our children of school age from the streets where poverty has kept them. Young and promising chaps end up hawking for survival while we attend our sanctimonious services. Isn't it surprising that armed robbery, fraud, and corruption, the deplorable state of our roads, the electricity problem, and every single issue that bedevils the Nigerian state seems to be progressing in the midst of our praying and waiting on God? Is it really difficult not to ponder on the kind of God it is we really go to worship? That's the painful reality, Pastor, that we have a God that we have created who, truly speaking, is not the God of the Bible. He is the God of our own creation, and this is a very helpless God. Otherwise, how do we reconcile the fact that all these prayers...
He's been helpless. They've been helpless.
All these prayers have not moved God to change our countries. Let me share an interesting experience in my own country about the absurdity of prayer.
That's in Uganda.
In Uganda. The absurdity of prayer. And I'm calling it the absurdity of prayer because prayer on its own is not bad, definitely. But when we do not appropriate prayer, then prayer becomes useless. Our executive director of our city, Kampala, is a very strong Christian, believer in the Lord, born again. I worked with her in my organization. I work with the Uganda Revenue Authority, the authority responsible for collecting taxes in my country. So this executive director was once in Uganda Revenue Authority, and now she's the city executive director. And in the last 4 years, she's done a tremendous job in transforming the city of Kampala. So much that some folks from London have confessed that Kampala is beginning to look better than some places in London. Unbelievable. However, they have at the same time been locked up in a political fight between the Lord Mayor, who is the political head of the city, and the executive director, who is the technical executive of the city. The executive director is appointed by the president, but the Lord Mayor is elected by the people. So he has the mandate of the people over the city. And according to our law, the Lord Mayor is the policy maker, or the politicians, so to speak, are the policy makers. Then the executive arm, they implement the policies. Now, the law has its own weaknesses, and as a result of that, it has caused a long fight, a long disagreement between the two arms, the political arm and the technical arm. And as usual, the church went to pray. And the church prayed that the Lord Mayor would be thrown out of office because he's a Muslim, but at the same time, really, not so much because, not so much because he's a Muslim, but because really, he had really become a pain. He was not effective, and he was just simply making noise and antagonizing all the programs that were taking place in the city. So it was really in order for action to be taken against him. So the church went to pray. We all participated in prayer, including myself. And we prayed for 2 years. And I must say God answered our prayer. And this Lord Mayor was impeached by his own councillors. A commission of inquiry was put in place that found him wanting, and finally was thrown out of office. So the last 2 years of his office, he spent them outside. Now, early this year, we had elections in Uganda, presidential elections and parliamentary elections and all other elections at the district level. Including the mayor elections. Now, as usual, the church again went to pray to believe God for the right person to take over the leadership of the city. Now that we had prayed this mayor out, the church now became very zealous in asking God to elect,
to bring
in a God-fearing mayor, a mayor who would be good. But one thing we didn't do as usual, no Christian stood to be elected. No Christian availed.
So you are not participating, you are only praying.
No Christian availed himself. So we prayed. I'm sure many Christians fasted. Now guess what? This same mayor who had been impeached came back. He stood and he was voted into office.
Again.
And as I speak right now, is firmly in charge of the city. So the question is, what kind of prayers are these where we ask God to come and probably do what he expects us to do? As I thought through this, I frankly felt that as a church in Africa, we've been guilty of treason.
Yes.
Really, if you were to take it on a very serious note, it's like we wanted to exchange places with God. Mm-hmm. It's like we've told God to come and do our work so that then we can be gods. Mm. So we sit and expect God to come and do what we're supposed to do.
Yes.
No wonder our countries have remained in the kind of state they are in. Point number 4. as a key observation I made from this book is that each of us has a specific mandate from God with a 7-part responsibility to be fruitful, to multiply, to replenish Nigeria. I have now replaced where is to replenish the earth to say to replenish Nigeria.
Yes.
To subdue Nigeria, to have dominion over the 3 spheres of life in Nigeria, to dress Nigeria, and to keep Nigeria. I frankly love what my president has always challenged the church in Uganda to do. He's always quoting Genesis 1:28, 1:27, 28, and challenging us and saying, if God commanded us to have dominion over nature, why are we not having dominion over nature? Why are we not taking control over the airspace? Why are we not taking control over the sea? Why are we not taking control? It's like we are only operating on the land, and even on the land, we are faced with a lot of hurdles in our nations. So, this book challenges us to appreciate the fact that we are God's certified agents of change to fulfill this mandate, this 7-part mandate. Now, to those who are accountants, you become a certified public accountant after you have completed that accountancy program.
Right.
You are certified, meaning that you are a recognized authority in your profession to be able to deal with all issues of accountancy. Now, in this book, I appreciate the fact that we are God's certified agents. In other words, God has certified us to be change agents. We have what it takes within us. We have the wherewithal for us to be able to fulfill the mandate of having dominion and taking over every part in our nation that must be redeemed. So, the key appreciation from that 7-part mandate is that God will not do anything that is within our power and our means to fulfill. As long as he knows it is within our power and mandate to fulfill, he will keep silent.
Right.
That's the reason why no amount of prayer will move God to change Nigeria unless you and me begin to take our positions. Number 5. I was impressed and challenged to appreciate that God has no jurisdiction on earth. Repeat that. God has no jurisdiction on earth.
Right.
The earth entirely belongs to man. To me, that was a very serious wake-up call. Because oftentimes, when we pray, it's like we are really pleading with the Lord to come and take over the affairs of the earth, to come and stop the corruption, to come and stop the sickness. I mean, as I read this book, one of the things that really troubles me is how malaria keeps devastating our countries in Africa. In Uganda, for the last so many years, every day, 300 people die because of malaria. Maybe now it's reduced to about 200 or something. But the question is, for how long will our people die even from diseases that can actually be prevented? Where are the scientists? Where are we? You may even find that some of our best scientific brains are in America, are in Europe, are in Asia, and they are the ones that have discovered these cures for these diseases. So, we must stop abdicating our roles of serving Nigeria through our endless prayer meetings and fellowships. I think it is time we get a balance in terms of prayer, in terms of fellowships. I mean, realistically, right now, thank God for social media. Social media is very good, and we love it because it is helping us to create a lot of impact. But at the same time, it has its other dark side of it. The dark side of it, as I participate in many social media programs, I see Christians complaining daily and daily, and these are elites. And they are complaining on these social media programs, especially on WhatsApp or whether on Facebook. They are complaining about the weather, they are blaming their politicians, they are blaming everything, and we are not taking responsibility for the transformation of our communities, of our societies. So these social media fellowships, in my view, are even affecting us even the more, because they are spreading negativity instead of encouraging us to be proactive. These platforms would be so good if we were discussing the solutions and the progress that we are making in changing our different spheres. Number 6, it's important that we stop crying over what God has created us to fix. That's the other point that I picked from this book. That whatever God has created us to fix, we should stop crying, because crying is a sign of helplessness.
That's true.
Where we are thinking that really somehow
But
divinely,
the church is the expert in crying these days.
Unfortunately, and I think there is this kind of thinking that somehow God will miraculously come and stop those who are corrupt from being corrupt. Either he will come and strike them dead, or either he will come and simply get hold of their hands and command each of them to stop being corrupt. I really don't know. Because unless we, the Christians, get out into these workplaces and begin to act as the salt, and begin to act as the light, and begin to show people that actually you can work in public service without necessarily being compromised. Yeah. Somebody must show others the way, that it is possible to live on a job and entirely depend on your salary, depend on your income, without taking money that does not belong to you. So if the Christians don't reach out to demonstrate this and to create the necessary systems that are necessary, it will become impossible.
Right.
One of the, I love the former Nigerian Minister of Finance, Dr.
Ngozi.
Yes, Dr. Ngozi. I have ordered for her book, because as I listened to this lady, I really felt that she has what it takes to transform the financial systems in Nigeria. And one of the things that she impressed me about was the fact that when she became the Minister of Finance, she started to put systems in place in order to curb the corruption.
Right.
That is what is needed. You know, putting systems in place to curb the corruption, to curb the thieving that is going on unabated. Number 7, we must avoid what I have called the Red Sea syndrome. I was challenged when I read in this book, specifically on page 65. On page 65, I have read this scripture several times as a Christian, and I have always loved to quote it because the part which says, Exodus chapter 14, verses 13 to 14, when the entire nation of Israel is sandwiched, is held up in the Red Sea, and the Egyptians are coming to come and destroy them, Moses stands up and tells the entire nation of Israel and tells them, fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show you today. Now, many times as Christians, we found it very easy to say, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. In other words, you don't need to do anything. The Lord will fight on your behalf. Your enemies whom you are seeing, you will not see them again because the Lord is going to fight on your behalf. All you need to do is to stand and see. In fact, I think verse 14 says, the Lord shall fight for you and you shall hold your peace. The church for too long has held its peace. The church for too long has stood still as the ills of society continue on in our midst. And we've all looked on helplessly because we've stood still. Now, the revelation that I got from this scripture is that in verse 15, the Lord does not come to thank Moses for encouraging the Israelites. He actually comes and rebukes him and asks him, why are you crying unto me? I had never understood that scripture that way, from this perspective, that actually God, every time we pray and we ask God to remove the corrupt, to heal the sick, or to transform our country, transform our economies, God is, in effect, is asking us, why are you crying to me? Shut up and instead rise up and do something.
Yeah.
So, the Red Sea syndrome of standing still and simply hoping that salvation is going to come from the Lord to change all our spheres in our nation is something that you and me must overcome. We must overcome the Red Sea syndrome. Lastly, point number 8, which I felt was very important, or maybe just before I leave that point of the Red Sea syndrome. In on page 65, and again I'll read it verbatim because I found it very instructive. The author writes and asks, how many sectors of the economy of our nation have degenerated and even died because we have been standing still and waiting for the salvation of the Lord? Some of us who should have taken certain actions or steps to move our country forward have been calling on the name of the Lord rather than doing what has already enabled us to do. That was a very important question. Lastly, number 8. The need for the church, there is a need for the church shift. Yes, and this is where now the first book of Pastor, Church Shift, and this one meet together. There is a need for church shift. A new paradigm shift where we take absolute responsibility for every sector of society. Because in this book of Church Shift, when I read it, it helped me to understand my promised land. It helped me to discover my Canaan. It helped me to understand what my sphere of influence was in society and what I needed to do. So a combination of this book, which demands us to have a shift, together with this now book that we are discussing, Only God Can Save Nigeria, What a Myth. This book now calls us to act. This book finally shakes us out of our comfort zones and forces us to act. And I think it's the reason why Reverend Joseph Oyewale said in his entire years of ministry as a missionary, he had never read a book written with such a passion, with such intensity, and with such authority. I agree with him. Because as I read it, I found the same. I found the passion in this book. I found the intensity in this book. But above all, the authority, the command that finally, as a church, as church members, as church leaders, as elites in our churches, we must now stand up and go and act. In taking responsibility, in this book, you will come across the story of how Dubai has developed. I think this was one area, one particular story that really shook me to my core. Because every time I travel, I pass through Dubai. It's one of the best cities today in the world. It's unbelievable to realize that Dubai has developed to become a world center of attraction in only about a space of 30 years. Matter of fact, in about 20 years. Because many of us, many of those who know Dubai 20 years ago, Dubai wasn't as it is now. But the leaders, the political leaders in Dubai, took absolute responsibility for the transformation of their country. And I love the story of their founder, Sheikh Maktoum bin Buti Al Maktoum. I mean, this gentleman, I even had never heard about him until I read this book. This particular gentleman, Sheikh Maktoum bin But Al Maktoum, Al Maktoum, and his sons, I mean the generations after him, especially I think Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who is I think currently the Prime Minister of Dubai. He took responsibility for the development of Dubai city into a world-class city. It wasn't as a result of prayer, but it was as a result of being foresight and being resolute. I mean, moving around and seeing what is taking place in other cities of the world and saying, we can do it in Dubai. I believe Nigeria can change, and it's going to change if you and me finally throw away the myth, the mentality, the mindset that only God can save Nigeria.
Do you know that I'm taking 200 people from Russia, from here to Nigeria with me?
Wow.
And I'm taking 2,000 people from all over the world, and many of them are going to be Nigerians in diaspora to go back with me to rebuild Nigeria. But, you know, I'm giving you the time to speak. Keep on talking. I want you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I think that's really what I have learned in this book. And at a personal level, you see, you can't read this book and not take action. Really, to be honest, if you don't take action, then you are living in absolute denial, of the reality, and two, you'll be living in absolute disobedience to what the Lord demands you and me to do in such a time like this. So at a personal level, as James in Uganda, one, I have purposed that I am going to encourage the pastors and all the church leaders to read this book, because to me this is a manual. I must find a way of how we can get this book in Uganda, because I believe it's a manual. It's a book that every Christian leader in Uganda needs. Should there be some Ugandans who might be watching, yes, and listening to me, I really want to appeal to you, get this book as quickly as you can, because we now have a responsibility for Uganda. Number two is that I have decided I am going to create programs to sensitize the Christians across the country of their responsibility to national development. And this will include organizing seminars, but at the same time, I am now purposing that I am going to write newspaper articles on a weekly basis to challenge the nation on issues to do with national development. I mean, I have everything it takes to write. I can write better than sometimes the articles I see in the papers. But because of that laid-back attitude that we've been having, that I have been having, I've never taken advantage of this. After reading this book, that is an area I want to exploit. Number four, I'm going to start a radio program. I'm going to start a television program to challenge and engage the nation and challenge every individual to take responsibility for their nation. Lastly, and this I've already started doing it while I'm here in Ukraine, I am already writing a book in the area of my passion. I now want to turn my 17 years of working in public service. I'm still working, but my 17 years of working in public service and standing against corruption, I now realize I have timeless lessons out of my personal experience that Ugandans can benefit from, that the young and the old can benefit from. Therefore, I'm now writing a book on integrity in the public service.
Wonderful.
So, in conclusion, this is a book that I encourage every Christian leader to buy and read. Matter of fact, this book is not only written for Christians per se. Even when you do not, even when you are a Muslim or any other person of any other faith, but you truly are concerned about the status of affairs of Nigeria, of any of our countries in sub-Saharan Africa, I think this is a book that you must read. It's a book that will challenge you to action. I thank you.
Wow, 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 wow. Now, is that why you said that this is the most prime time and the very right time for you to have visited? Why did you make that point?
I made that point, frankly, because if I didn't come, I'm not sure whether I would have come across this book early enough for me to begin to take the kind of decisions that I am now taking. That's the reason why I feel that this was a very prime time for me to have come in Ukraine. Obviously, I would have gotten it later on the Amazon, but then it could have taken me a bit of a while. So this to me has been a prime time, a very, very prime and strategic time for me at a personal level, coming to meet Pastor Sunday and coming across. In fact, when I came 3 weeks ago, I found when this book was 1 week old in circulation. So I took hold of it, I read it, and I immediately got challenged.
How many copies do you want to? You want to take some copies with you to Uganda?
You see, if I had a way of carrying, if I had a way of carrying, I would carry over 100 books to be realistic. But for now, at least if I can take 30, that would be very good. That would be very good, because I want the key leaders in Uganda to get this book. I will challenge them to read it, and then I want us to take, to develop clear action programs after reading this book.
Now, again, for those people who are looking for a way of getting the book, you can get this book on Amazon, amazon.com. Just look for Only God Can Save Nigeria, What a Myth. Or you just look for Sunday Adelaja and you will see the list of my books there. Or another thing you could do is for you to go to, if you are from Africa, and you are based in Nigeria or somewhere, you can go to okada.com, okadabooks.com, and then you can get the book there. But for those of you who are coming for HMT, because we have HMT, History Makers Training, which Pastor James is a graduate of HMT. Mm-hmm. Pastor James has been here. He's a graduate of HMT. And if you are coming for the HMT between the 6th and 12th of November, you'll be able to get this book here in Kiev, Ukraine. So you'll be able to get a copy for you as yourself, or get as many copies for yourself, and then get to give to the people that you want to bring some back with. So you could get this book here, or you could get them. You could get it on Amazon as well, or on Okada Books. And what do you think the impact this book will be able to have on people who will read it, and on the countries that are looking for development in general?
I have absolute faith, or confidence for that matter, that anybody who comes across this book and reads it, this book is going to act as a catalyst and finally set a revolution in place for every country that will read this book and take action. It's going to be a revolution. I'm looking at a revolution in Nigeria. I'm looking at a revolution in Uganda. I'm looking at a revolution in Kenya, in Tanzania, in South Africa, in every country that is going to read this book. There is going to be a new revolution in our countries.
What position will you put this book in out of other books that you've read?
I would, like I had earlier on alluded, to be honest, this to me is my number one. As James, to me this is my number one book.
Are you serious?
Oh yes. To me this is my number one book.
Maybe because it's putting fire in you.
Not necessarily, but because I have looked at you see, for the first time, we have a book that directly tackles the pastors, the church leaders, the religion. And to me, I feel this is critical. For the first time, you have a book that is speaking certain things that we know have been happening in our churches, and we've never had the courage to confront them. So it's critical. It has even dealt with my own mindset. There are dreams that I have sat and waited for God to come and miraculously move. As I read this book, I realized I have now got to move. It's not God to move, it is me to move.
So, because it's important to me what you are saying. You are a PhD student in America.
Yes.
And you have studied in Africa, you have studied all over the world, you have traveled all over the world. You are a government official. Yes. You are a very highly placed, you are an assistant commissioner.
Yes.
In your country. And you are highly placed and you've read so many books. You are a very educated person. Mm-hmm. For you to say this is your number one book, and it means you know that this book will cause some change.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's not just the book that is for the head.
It's not knowledge. You see, many books that I've read, they challenge you, but they leave you. You simply have a good feeling after you've read some books. But this particular book is customized, if I may say so. It is customized to the challenges of Africa. It speaks directly to what the church in Africa needs to do in order to help our countries develop. And that's why I find it a premium book.
And after this book, you said you are going to take on the other one? You are saying after this book, you wanted to say something before.
Yes, of course I was saying that combining this book, okay. There is of course another one that I'm yet to read. When I came in here, there is another book that I've come across, the one of the Nigerian question. Yes. Nigeria and the leadership question.
You know what? No, you bring it to the middle so that I say it.
Now, Nigeria and the leadership question is critical to me, and this could take me another time to talk about this, because one, my PhD is in global leadership, and this particular book is addressing issues to do with leadership.
You know what? Because you are still going to be here for time, I'm going to challenge you to read this book before you go, okay, so that I could invite you back, so that you could be back, come back to this program after you finish reading it, yes, and give analysis on this book as well.
No. Thank you so much.
So now, I think I can call you doctor already, Dr. James. What will you say after reading this book? Only God can save Nigeria. What will you say? Will you say the Nigerian church and Nigeria in general is lucky that this book came to life?
Actually,
or how will you, what was your description? What would your message to the Nigerian church or to the Nigerian people even?
Actually, Nigeria is not lucky. Nigeria is profoundly blessed. Because to me, luck would be an understatement. That this book has been written by someone from the church, part of the church, and addressing the body corporate in Nigeria as a church, I would say that the church in Nigeria is hugely blessed. I'm very, very, very confident that if the church in Nigeria will read this book with humility and find a purpose to change, there is no imagination to how great Nigeria is going to be. I'm one of the firm believers in Nigeria for so many reasons, that Nigeria is a country that gives. Nigeria has always been a giver. because it has produced great sons and daughters that have influenced all other parts of Africa and the world at large. I mean, I'm here, Pastor Sunday is a Nigerian, and that's already testimony of the blessing of Nigeria. So the church in Nigeria is truly blessed, and it has the potential to now change the entire nation of Nigeria as they read this book and as they put it into practice.
Wow, amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. You know, I am extremely, extremely encouraged by your reviews. You have done a great, great job for us. You have done a great, great job. And I want to say, some people are saying right now that they want to distribute the books, that they want to buy the books. Some people want to say, somebody is even saying, I wish I could buy 1,000 of these books to distribute to people all over Nigeria. You know, there is, our publisher in Nigeria is actually looking for a partner. I don't know if anybody online right now knows Bode's telephone. Is anybody having Bode's telephone? If you know Bode's telephone number, if you know Bode's telephone number, you know, it would have been good to write it. If anybody can write Bode's telephone number here. David does not have consent. Okay. Yeah, so Bode is looking for partners. He wants to publish the book with his money. And because he wants to publish the book, not a telephone. No, appreciate it, I'm not a telephone. Should be to that. He needs to publish the book. And so he's looking for partners. So if you want to buy the book, if you aim to buy this book in Nigeria, what we want to ask you to do is this. Call Bode up. We'll give you Bode's number now. Call Bode up and order 50 books or 40 books or 100 books, as many books as you want to order. So once you can order it, we don't need to wait for 2 weeks. If you can order the books and pay at least part of the book, or for half of the book, or for some of the book, then the book will come out immediately. The books can come out as quickly as next week. The books could be ready next week. If you will call Bode or pay him ahead, then he will print the book for cheaper for you. So it's a deal. You could make a deal for Bode, tell him that you will pay him ahead for the numbers that you want to put. Place an order, Place an order, pay him ahead so that he could print the book for you. He has the book already in Nigeria, but he wants to get some orders and some people to pay ahead so that he will be able to release it in Nigeria. So, but this telephone number is you see, Natalia is written, but this telephone number is 234, that's Nigerian code, 803-409-3699. 234, that's the Nigerian code, 803-409-3699. If you could call Bode and say, we want to order the book, tell him how many books you want to order, and tell him how many you'll be ready to pay for right immediately. Then if he has up to, I don't know how many he needs to be paid for, if you order enough, he could print the book for you immediately. He wants to print the book as early as possible. So if anybody who needs my book in Africa actually could call Bode's number, and all these books that are here, all these new books, he could print them out for you. So so congratulations to all of you. Congratulations to Nigerians that the book is ready. The ball is in our court now. We are now the ones who need to read the book, and they need to do what we need to do. But if you are in America or out of Nigeria, you have credit card, you could always order it on Amazon. It will come to you in a matter of few days, 2-3 days. So you can order it now. If you order it right now, you'll be able to get the book on Amazon or on Okada Books. So on Amazon, you can get the hard copy and the soft copy. You can get the soft copy as well. So let's go ahead and get the books. And I want us to say a big, big thank you to Pastor James for getting this commentary ready for us. It's a wonderful, wonderful job you did, Pastor. You did a wonderful, wonderful job. I mean, it's very clear that you're an intellectual. and that the way you did the analysis, the way you did your research, the way you went through it, you really prove yourself to be the intellectual that you truly are. So I'm very proud of you. Thank you for doing such a good job for this book. But more are coming. More books are coming. There are going to be many more books in this form. We are coming. I'm going to release another book maybe next month or this November, maybe before the HMT. It's going to be called Insulted by Ungodliness. So that's going to be another very hot book. So we'll release that one before you go. Maybe you'll be able to review that for us as well. And then we'll do another one, Mountain of Ignorance, which is the problem. Ignorance is the problem of Africa. So Mountain of Ignorance will be another one that we will release. Then before this year, maybe I will be able to release 2 more books. So Insulted by Ungodliness, Mountain of Ignorance, and maybe I will release another one also, Pastor Face Your Calling. Those are books that are supposed to change Africa and the world at large. So, I will not spend time reading the comments today because I think that everything is so clear. You did a wonderful job. So proud of you. And I hope everybody will get the book and, get transformed and get fired up to be able to do the work of the kingdom. So I'll be back to you guys tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, I'm starting another series. But we'll see you tomorrow morning. God bless you guys. Thank you, Pastor James. You've done a great job. People are falling in love with you already. I'm sure they are waiting for your next review. And next Sunday, we are going to have Pastors Nkiru and Obi Ojimodu. Pastors Nkiru and Obi Ojimodu are going to be here next week, Sunday. So thank you, everyone. Nice to have you. And, go get the book. Go get the book and let fire come to your bones as fast as possible. God bless. Bye.